study of tomorrow, Father God, that we want to learn more and have togetherness, that we agree in one body. And Heavenly Father, as we go through this evening, Heavenly Father, you be with our families that are home. That Lord God, you bless each one that has come to this evening meeting. Father God, be with our leader, that the Holy Spirit dwell within each heart while we're going through this meeting. Father God, thank you. Thank you, Father God, for all you do in your Son Jesus' name.
So, I just got home May 18th, coming up on 1 month ago. And I've been in Anchorage for the last 3 years, going to school, finishing up college. One of my classrooms I spent 3 years in. College was rough, all right. It's hard, but I think one of the biggest things I learned is that if you just keep working at something, if you just keep working at it, don't give up, then you'll get through. I learned more about Alaska and the history of Alaska and how long people have been around here. 10,000 to 14,000 years. In a lot of me words, that's since prehistoric times. Going back to the Stone Age, people would say. This is a picture of probably Nome area. It's a tent covered with skin, spraying with Eskimos. But Alaska's older than China. People have been living in Alaska for maybe 2 or 3 times as long as China's been around. But when the Vietnamese come, like it or not, we got mixed up in a cash economy. We can't just live subsistence lifestyle anymore. It takes cash to buy bullets, it takes cash to buy gas, oil, heating oil for the house. You guys know this. These are some numbers. I didn't want to get too specific, but the cost of living differs all over the state for housing and for food. Bethel is the least affordable place to buy a house. Kodiak has the highest rent. Anchorage houses cost the most, $360,000 for an Anchorage house. Shipping supplies, to buy 1/3 of your shipping supplies in Fairbanks is about $26,000 if you buy locally. I learned a lot more about ANCSA, but ANCSA is really complicated. There's a lot more to ANCSA than I know about. I wasn't even born then. The Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. What I did learn though is that it happened because the people came together and they worked together and they talked. And there was a lot of different plans going on that were being talked about being made. But the one that we have right now is the one that they ended up going with. And there's a lot in ANCSA that can really help us, but there's also a lot in ANCSA that maybe isn't helping us that much. And it's been 45 years. That's 3 generations by my count. That's a long time, man. One of the problems I see with ANCSA is the 8A program. This is the program that we use to get contracts secured with the federal government. So when the federal government wants to open up a big, huge project worth millions and millions of dollars, they are obligated under the AICSA 1971 Act to give Alaska Native corporations first shot at the contract. I don't know if that's totally accurate, but I know that the 8A program is a way for Alaska Native corporations to secure bids from the federal government. The problem with 8A program and ANCSA in this way is that in order for that 8A program to keep working and to work, our status as Native people has to be listed as vulnerable. So right now we're listed as a vulnerable people because we're dependent on so much. We're dependent on food stamps, we're dependent on heating assistance, we're dependent on all this different stuff. So we're vulnerable. The 8A program works because we're vulnerable. So one way to look at that is that the Alaska Native corporations rely on our vulnerability for their success financially. In other words, it's not in NANA's best interest to help us. NANA Development Corporation. And this is just my opinion. I'm not saying this is how it is. I'm just saying this is what I've learned, not just in my time in school, but interning at NANA, talking with other students about Alaska Native corporations and about ANCSA. So I've slowly been realizing more and more over the past year or two that NANA has motivations that are directly against the motivations of the villages. NANA Development Corporation's interests and motivations as a business are to grow and to expand and to develop resources, because that's what you have to do as a business in order to succeed and keep going. Villages rely on the land, rely on the animals, rely on the water, which goes directly against developing those natural resources. So we may get really nice calendars with real good looking pictures and makes it look like NANA is really helping us, but if we're really going to try to do something, we have to let go of this false idea that NANA's going to somehow step in and help us do anything meaningful, because that's not in their best interest as a company to do it. Even though we own NANA, even though all of us together in this region own NANA, and we're the ones that are technically direct the board members who direct the companies. NANA says that the biggest way that it wants to help the people is through jobs and through dividends, but I only see one job here in town that's NANA, directly NANA, and that's not a really big asset. That's not very helpful in the village. And again, this is all just my opinion. I'm not trying to say this is the only way, but, and then dividends, you know, a couple years ago, we missed out on dividends because they weren't, I don't know, they had some kind of problems making our dividends. We do business in all the states, pretty much, down in the lower 48. What does people in Kentucky or Louisiana have to do with me and Herbert? Or me and Grant? Not much, but it helps make NANA Development Corporation get bigger. And there's a lot of people making a lot of money, and I've met some of them. 6 figures. I went over to the East Coast to Washington DC when I was interning with them. They sent me over there. And I met people making 6 figures that don't actually produce anything. They just walk around and shake hands and smile and talk to people. $100,000 plus just for trying to impress people and try to let them do business with us while we're living at poverty level here. Some of the benefits of ANCSA, though, is that we have federal status as tribal people. This is different than the state recognized status, though, because the state of Alaska doesn't recognize Alaska Native people as sovereign. So it's kind of like the marijuana stuff going on. The state of Alaska has legalized marijuana, but the feds have not legalized marijuana. So with our tribal status, it's recognized federally, but it's not recognized at the state level. So, and that also gave us certain land rights, but there's above ground and below ground land rights. And from what I understand, and again, ANCSA is very complicated, but when ANCSA happened, we had to transfer tribal land and turn it into municipal land or something like that. I don't know. But we still do have some sort of land rights that we can still kind of cling to and point to. Those might not necessarily be around forever. They were made by laws, and just like other laws, they can be taken away. But even with all these different laws going on, there are benefits to living in rural Alaska when we're not in the city. We can go out there and collect food. We can go out there and collect water. We can make shelter. And we have community. In the city, the community, the sense of community in the big cities like Fairbanks, Anchorage, and Juneau, and those bigger cities, it's not like in Selawik. In Selawik, when we need help, people help out, whether it's for big projects or small projects. I've seen people just walking by and just do something. It's not like that in the city. And we have our own economy here. We have our own way of dealing with money, and then not just money. We have our own way of dealing with trade and that kind of thing, and that's a big benefit. But it's been 45 years since ANCSA was passed, and I don't think that the original idea that ANCSA was made for, which was to help the people and protect the land and protect the animals, I think we've gotten so far away from the original idea of ANCSA that if we don't step up and start taking action right now, those rights that we were given, even though they were given to us by a country that came in and basically conquered us and then said, okay, oh, you have some rights. But it's been 45 years and things aren't doing very good economically in the village. We're mixed up in a cash economy, so we need some kind of cash something to do with cash, but it can't be all cash. It's, I don't know, something's gotta happen. There's just too much going on, too many problems going on in the villages, and it's not just Selawik, and it's not just Nana region. It's all over the state out in rural Alaska. So it's time to start trying to think about something new, and trying to start seeing what we can do while we still have rights. Those rights could go away. The state of Alaska is basically on a tripod. Oil, federal money, and private industry. This isn't the right figure, but it kind of shows the kind of money that we're talking about. This is one I just made up, but basically the state of Alaska's economy is made up 1/3 oil, 1/3 federal money. That means the federal government giving Alaska and funding Alaska money. And then the other third, private business, like Nana, all the ANCs that have for-profit arms, all the grocery stores, all that stuff is profit. But the largest section of the private sector is the Alaska Native corporations combined. Not just NANA, not just ASRC, but when you put all of the Alaska Native corporations together as one part of the private sector, that's the majority of the private sector. In other words, Alaska Natives in this state have real financial power. We could do something. We could talk to our boards. We could change policy. We could do something. We're a governing majority. So there's a lot of different strategies. I just pulled this off the internet. Search for SMART goals. SMART means specific, measurable, achievable, positive, and timely. So it's one way about thinking about goals. When you set goals, to make them specific, make them measurable, make them achievable, make them positive, and set a time limit on them. It's not the only way to set goals, and it's not the only way to start problem solving, but it's one way to start looking at things. That way you don't bite off more than you can chew, or get too lost in the weeds on something. But we need to start coming up with strategies for what to do. Since the way things are working right now, we're hustling too much for stove oil. We shouldn't be hustling so much for stove oil. We shouldn't be hustling so much for basic food. We've been here for 10 to 14,000 years. We lived here before there was stove oil. Last summer of 15, one of my co-workers at the First Alaskans Institute drew this picture. And it's awesome. And I took a picture of it. I said, hey, can I take a picture of that? Yeah, I didn't know what I was going to use it for. And then when I was making this presentation, I texted him and I said, hey, I'm going to use your picture. Cool, huh? He said, yeah, go ahead. He came up with this idea that in Native communities, this part says what you want to do and how you're going to get there. So when we figure out what we want to do and how we're going to get there, the way we get there is first at the center, community. The community's the center. And then the children, and then the young adults, and then the established adults, and then the elders. because we respect our elders. We try to work with the established adults. We try to help the young adults coming up, help them come into their adulthood. Everybody watches out for the kids. Some of the things that are being talked about in the state of Alaska, and actually all over the world, has to do with water and water rights. If you ever thought that that would be crazy, that you'd have to go to court just to get your rights to have drinking water, that happens in Montana, that happens in California, that's been going on in the lower 48 for decades, maybe even over 100 years down there. And we just take it for granted, like, oh yeah, make snow water, make rainwater, make ice water. But if we don't start paying attention to our water rights and all the other kind of rights, they might be having big conversations about these kinds of things that have big consequences for us, and we might not even know about them because we're just too busy doing our own thing out here. This world population, the next few slides are going to be about world population. And these world population slides are kind of the reason that a lot of these things like water rights, mining, Red Dog Mine, any of the mines in the Nana region, the world population is the main driver behind these things. Because as the world population is getting bigger, that means more people buying iPhones, more people buying computers. You can't just make these out of corn or something. You gotta mine for rare earth minerals. You have to do all kinds of stuff. I like this slide here though because it shows the Stone Age, and it only goes back to 7000 BC. But Inupiaq people have been in Alaska since before 7000 BC. And so, in the Logme terms, we've been here since before the beginning of the new Stone Age. I thought that was pretty cool. But then when they discovered coal, that's when the world population really started blowing up. And the Industrial Revolution, when they started making machines and able to do mass production of stuff. The invention of making machines and the discovery of coal and then oil, that's when the world population blew up. In 1960, the world population was 3 billion, and then in just a couple of decades, we've gone up billions of people. In what used to take the whole history of the Earth to happen to get to 3 billion. Then it happened in like 1 decade, 2 decades. So the human population is just blowing up, just going crazy fast. And this is kind of the biggest thing that I wanted, one of the biggest things that I wanted to point out. Is that these cities, these big cities all over the world, all that metal and plastic and electricity, all that stuff takes resources. All those resources have to come from somewhere. Alaska's a really big somewhere with a whole lot of stuff. And if we don't know our rights, and if our native corporations have motivations that are directly opposite the tribal motivations, we could find ourselves evicted from our own land. That might be a worst case scenario, that might not never happen, but I think it's a possibility that we can't just totally think is not going to happen. Or we might not be evicted from our land, but we could have to move from our land for climate reasons. All over the world, the climate's changing. Countries that are in little islands, the sea level is rising, the people have to move because they're on a little island, they got nowhere to go, it's all water. We might have to move because of climate change. Or both, legal reasons and climate change. There's 4 different stages that they think countries all over the world go through. And it has to do with how industrialized they are. Post-industrial countries like America, Europe, maybe China, I think, Russia, the big rich ones that are kind of considered first world countries, their population level is pretty much flat. It's not growing, it's not declining. Other countries, stage 2, urbanizing, and just countries that are just barely starting to come out of third world status and become urbanized and industrialized, their population is increasing. And that's what's going on globally. That's why in the year 2050, the world population is supposed to be, what, 9 billion? And so they're worried about how we're going to feed 9 billion people, get water for 9 billion people, house them, move them around to work. But here's something we're going to have to understand if we're going to start working together, which we already do anyways. We work together. I see it all the time. But if we're going to start changing our relationship to our resources, the way we're using resources, we have to know about this thing called the tragedy of the commons. And that's when there's like, look at our tank farm. There's 140,000 gallons of gas and 100,000 gallons of stove oil. About 240,000 gallons total. If, theoretically speaking, just have a thought experiment, what if all of a sudden I became super, super rich and had basically unlimited amounts of money? It would be legal, perfectly legal for me to go to Native Store and buy all the gas in Selawik and all the stove oil. And then just, I don't know, ship it over to Kobuk or do something with it. That would leave everybody else out, but it would be legal. The tragedy of commons is when there's a common resource that everybody has access to. And so, since everybody has free access to it, they start getting more and more of it. But when more and more people start taking more and more of that resource, next thing you know, that resource is gone and there's no more. And then everybody's out of it. We can live without oil. Humanity has lived without oil up until oil was discovered. But we can't live without water. And people in Alaska are already talking about water rights. Water rights in Alaska are already an issue. But if we use our resources here in Selawik together as a group, and not everybody just making a mad dash for you're trying to get as much as they can and just not even worry about anybody else, then I think we could really do something big. So some of the points I'm trying to say is that we could lose our land, we could lose our legal right to be here. That could happen from a corporate level, our own people, Nana people, or it could happen from the federal government saying, there's oil under Selawik, there's oil under Egot. We're gonna have to come in there and drill for that. Did you guys know we're sitting on oil?
We do that from 1950.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's been too cost prohibitive for the government to come in and drill for oil. But pretty soon that oil might start looking pretty good. And then they could just kick us out. Say, sorry, you gotta go somewhere. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And these are the 60 words that are probably the most scary words that have been used for war ever. These 60 words right here have what allowed the US government to open Guantanamo, to detain people illegally, to detain people secretly, without giving them right to lawyer, without letting them call their family. Drone strikes, secret drone strikes. And this isn't me just making this up. This is the 60 words that are being reported on that they can use. I'm talking about these 60 words because I'm saying that if the government decides that the oil in Selawik has become valuable enough to move in and try to make a claim on it, or the water in Alaska becomes a national resource and the government decides it's time to share the water that Alaska has with the rest of the lower 48, because the lower 48 is drying up. Alaska's drying up. The whole world's drying up. It's getting warmer. But these 60 words come from the authorization for the use of military force, which was originally created in '91 for the Iraq Gulf War. They changed a few wordings of it for the 2001 edition. And this version right here was authorized September 14th, 2001, just 3 days after September 11th. And it's up to the government who they decide is associated forces. They don't have to tell anybody who those associated forces are. They don't have to show any evidence, any trial. They can do what they want. When I got done with college on May 1, I had to move out of that apartment that we were in, so I was technically homeless. But I didn't want to go straight home and wait for fire. And I heard Peter was coming back for the 20th of May, so I decided I'd come back May 18th in case I get stuck in Cox or something. So I had 18 days to transition from being in school and being in college and learning a lot about how the Nalapami world works. I had time to think about it, digest it, try to figure out how it makes sense. So I drove around. I went camping, went car camping, man, it was awesome. I was real lucky, man, I barely made it too. Drove around, I got to see how Anchorage people are in a different way. Because when I was in school, I was busy driving around, going this, going there, picking people up, doing homework, doing all this stuff. But when you're homeless and out of a job, man, when you're just walking around the city looks real different. seeing how people are, see some weird stuff out in the parking lots, like not even in weird places, but just out in normal places. I started noticing, I don't know, a lot more, I guess. So I was real grateful for that time to sit back and think. But then I got here to Selawik, and man, that river, especially over by that native store, that one boardwalk that goes all the way out, man, it was high water this spring. And I could really tell that river is getting wider and wider. And you guys already know this. NASA's came through Selawik and has talked about it. Manila talked about it before NASA. Selawik's going to be underwater. There's going to be a whale surface by amber someday. So we got to go. While we still have some rights. Because those rights can be taken away. We take them for granted, man. We lean on them. But they could just be knocked out from under us just like that. So while we still have ways to make it day to day, while we still got ways to make it month to month, while we still got time to make guvrak, I know how to make guvrak from scratch, man. It's fun. It just takes a long time. But we gotta go. We can't stay in Selawik. This place is gonna be underwater. I think it'll be within my lifetime.
I got a host
Right here, Adams Landing.
call forward
We gotta go to Spud.
32.
Spud has a runway. Spud's up near the hills. We gotta use Spud as a base camp. And start moving Selawik up, further up the hills from Spud. But use Spud as like a, I don't know, transition. Huh? Yeah. Boom, right there. But that means getting permission from Nana to cross Nana land, even though we're the ones living here. And all the bigwigs in Nana live somewhere else. East Coast, man, those guys. So, my big idea is we move to Spud, start making houses up in the hills, kind of like those old style houses, but better. The old style houses used to drip. My mom said they used to drip on her in the springtime when the frost was melting. Brown water. But we don't have to make them like that. We can make them better. We can make the frame and then cover that frame with fabric, the waterproof kind, and then cover that with tin roofing and put gravel around the edge so that all the water that does hit it and comes off will drain off instead of flooding the house. And then put all this out on, and then put triple pane windows on it and put sheetrock in the inside and make it all look modern and laminate floor and whatever you want inside. Make it nice. You don't have to be dirt walls on the inside. That's about where Spud is. So what I think we need to do is, instead of trying to build bridges between here and that lake, just go to that lake and build a big dock so that a lot of boats could park at the same time. And then build a boardwalk from that lake to Spud. Because the boardwalk's going to be our only shot at doing this. That dump road, that gravel dump road that took 10, 12 plus years to happen. It took 10, 12 years to happen, and it took millions of dollars. We don't have 10 or 12 years. We don't have millions of dollars. The state's broke. Nana can barely pay us dividends. Gives us one job in the village. Nana's not going to help you. The state's not going to help you. We have to do this. But it's got to be done right, because we live here. We know the tundra is sensitive. We know there's animals out there. So, and this is, again, this is just my ideas. I'm just trying to get the conversation started. I'm just trying to throw some ideas out there. One of the ideas I came up with is this idea for the boardwalk. What we do is start the boardwalk at Spud and come this way using timber from up there. It's genius, right? Come on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go up there, get a sawmill going, get guys up there, make lumber, start building boardwalk, have the trail marked out, staked out, GPS'd out, all the permits ready to go to cross the land. But it wouldn't be the kind of boardwalks we have here in town, because we don't need these kind of boardwalks. What we need is, this is the end view, and these are all just pieces of wood that are cut the same length, so it'll be easy to make them. We'll have a template, so we can just pound them out. And I don't know if it would actually work, this is just an idea. But make them just wide enough for a four-wheeler. That's where the four-wheeler wheels would go. And then they'd poke down, the frames would poke down on the tundra, so there'd be less impact on the tundra. But then this flat part where the wheels go would actually have a groove in the center of it with Teflon on the bottom. And we'd make trailers out of snow machine undercarriage wheels. Because I know there's tons of snow machine undercarriage wheels here. And they're cheap and they're easy to get and they're mass produced. They'd be easy to make a trailer out of. That's what the snow machine undercarriage wheel would go in. But then the Honda wheel would be wide enough that it would just go right over that. Because those things are what, only this wide? And the reason we'd want a groove like that and the tracks like that is so that we could hook up more than one trailer to one Honda.
Like a train.
Like a train, man!
Yeah.
That way when you make a curve, if you just had no groove like that, when you made a turn, boom, they'd all fall off if you were trying to tow more than one. But you could hook up, like, I don't know, as many as one Honda could pull, depending on what kind of load you're taking. And so once the boardwalk was built from that lake to Spud, and the dock was made, then we could start going back and forth with boat to that lake, load up our stuff, put it on 3 trailers pulled by one Honda, 4 trailers pulled by one Honda, drive up to Spud, which is only 12, 13 miles away, and then have dirt road from there to the new village. And it would probably have to be up further in elevation, up past Spud. But Spud would be like a good base camp for building the boardwalk starting this way. And I don't know, this is just an idea. I don't know if it would work, but it's just, I think we're gonna have to do something like that. I think we're gonna have to figure out how to make some kind of a road between Spud and here, and we're gonna have to figure it out in a way, and if Nana will help, great. If the state will help, great. I don't think they're going to. They don't have the incentive to. It's to their advantage to keep us down. because that way it'll be easier to take the resources. It'll be easier to make money. So I think we gotta figure out some kind of way to build a road. We gotta figure out something. I think we should start from Spud, work this way, because all the timber's up at Spud, up in the hills, and build old style. Man, just think about it. Old style housing, 4-foot thick walls. All the old people said those houses were the best. They were better than these modern houses because they were warm in the winter and cool in the summer. These modern houses are cold in the winter and hot in the summer. Imagine building a sod house, modern style, up in Spud, with local timber, very, very few supplies shipped in from town. It would cost way less than that $360,000 home in Anchorage. But then the biggest part about it is that the heating bill that we're paying, what, $1,000, $2,000 a month to heat our homes? That heating bill, we wouldn't have to be hustling for heating oil. Think about that. No heating bill. People used to, oh my God. Anna used to go get so much willows on one shoulder, she had to put axe to hold them. We could heat our homes with willows. Have our own small wood stove. Have it hot inside. Just for your own labor. No heating bill. And then if we get hook up geothermal and solar, no electricity bill, find local water, no water bill. If you're going out firefighting this summer, think about if all of the money you make from firefighting, think about it, none of it went to bills. None of it. The kind of stuff you could buy with however much you get in the summertime. That'd be awesome. So there's I think there's a lot of ways Native people are viewed by Alaska. I think there's a lot of ways we view ourselves in Alaska. I think there's a lot of different ways people get labeled within a village. All the drama. But we don't have time for drama anymore. We have to work together. We have to forget about the titles people have given us or that we've taken on ourselves. If we don't, Selawik's going to keep sinking. And we're going to have to just leave with the clothes on our back and be refugees. You know what kind of life refugees live? They don't get to say, well, they don't get to decide what they do with their life. They get placed in camps, a refugee camp. Selawik people could become climate refugees. We could be shipped off to Anchorage and put in a huge apartment complex building. All of Selawik people can easily fit in one apartment complex building, man. Anchorage is huge. They got huge buildings over there. It could happen. So we have to make a commitment move. We have to make a jump. But we have to do it in mind of the community resource, which is our fuel. That's our biggest asset right now. Besides our local people. Because people are the greatest asset. Like that bridge with elders in the community. But if we have the capacity to store 100,000 gallons of stove oil and 140,000 gallons of gas, if we have that kind of storage here in our town, But we all just keep driving around Honda every day to go check the mail, go airport, go ride around. All these kids riding around, man, there used to be a driving limit, age limit on driving. If everybody just uses a little bit, and there's so many little everybody's, all of that gas will be gone. And right now we need that gas for boat trips to the lake, to support people making a boardwalk from Spud. Our people, Nana's not going to send people to do it. The state's not going to send people to do it. We need to conserve that resource and build a road, build some kind of cool boardwalk, some kind of awesome village engineered boardwalk that's never been seen before. Or one that's been made before, I don't know, maybe there's some awesome design out there. But we have to make a commitment move as a community, as a whole. Because if just us in here start to go out and just us walking to post office every day, walking to store every day, all that gas is still gonna go. This kind of commitment move needs to happen at the village level. Maybe, I don't know, I could be wrong. This is just all my idea. And it's meant to just be a conversation starter. I don't want to just talk. I want to listen. But with this resource that we have, the fuel, we're now facing the problem called the problem of the collective. And that's when we all recognize that there's a problem, and we all think that we should do something about it, but everyone thinks it's someone else's job to do something about it, and so none of us does something about it. For a more clear example, about 2 months ago, there was a whole bunch of Republican candidates for president. There was lots. And they were all saying, we all need to drop out except for one of us, because this guy Trump can't win. We can't let Trump win. We all have to drop out except for one of us. But they all stayed in the race thinking that, oh, it's going to be me that's going to stay in there and I'll be the one that beats Trump. And then they all lost. That's the problem of the collective. When we all think we're going to solve a problem together, but everybody's waiting for somebody else to make the first move. But unless we act together in unison like that, we'll just piss away our gas on trips to the boat, trips to the post office, kids riding around for fun. These modern homes are crazy, man. Everybody's hustling for stove oil. Everybody's hustling for money to buy stove oil, especially in the winter, when you really have to have it. But there's no reason that we should be hustling for all this stove oil money. We lived here before stove oil. We're going to be here after stove oil, because oil won't be around forever. Some people say that the peak oil happened in the 70s. Some people say that they passed the halfway point of using all the oil in the world in the 70s. And it's all downhill from here, and it's all just going to get harder to get to, like under Selawik. We have to move up to the hills, make modern versions of these sod houses. Boy, I wish you could see that picture better. That's a old style sod house, but kind of modern, glass windows. Man, I bet it seemed real high tech when it's time though. And then up there at the airport, make gravity feed indoor water. I've done gravity feed indoor water. It don't take that much. And it's gravity feed, no pump. Nothing to maintain. Just pipes to keep clean, and a water tank to keep clean. It's nice and quiet, man. It's like steam. Hot water, most of the world, America's kind of the odd country out on this. Most of the world uses hot water with an on-demand system, and it's propane. You know how we have those huge hot water heaters that keep like 50 gallons of water hot for hours and hours and on end while nobody's using it, and it's using up propane to keep that water hot while nobody's using it? That's not how most of the world does it. Most of the world realizes that that is a waste of gas, a waste of fuel, and uses on-demand hot water heating. Meaning when you turn on the hot water tap, that propane, I don't know how it does it, but it heats the water directly as you're using it. And then when you turn off the hot water, it stops heating the hot water. So you're not using fuel like these hot water heaters, these American style hot water heaters, man. I don't know how we'll do sewer up there in the hills, but we can figure something out. And until we figure out some kind of sewage water treatment system, we'll just make outhouse and make a hallway to it from the house, so we don't have to go out when it's real cold.
You know, one of the resources we find up there, there's a lot of underwater. You ever see now, it's fed from these water
Geothermal water.
coming out the ground. Whole canal, that's the only place where it gets, about 2 miles east of Spud. There's a lake, there's no creek forming into it. But there's about 4 feet of water, that's about a foot deep flowing out of it all the time. Water, clean water, net.
And it's been there for years, and people that are from down here, are the people that just go up there to go hunt the sea. He's talking about 50 years ago, where it's been there and nobody bothered.
Like the Lee said, it used to steam. Water was hot one time.
Yeah. So there's water up there. We can figure
Right.
something out.
Lots of state has pictures for underwater, pictures all over that area. Daniel Foster will tell you when you leave Hamilton before you make that cut to the west, there's a large hole in the skin. One coming up and it's probably part of that system, underground water.
So there's water. But we have to figure out these sewage systems the right way, because if everybody just builds their own outhouse wherever they want, that stuff drains into the water. And with, what, close to 900 people here, that's a lot of we gotta worry about.
You are right, because the theory they have now, you can have a really good side effect. You'd be shot outside, that'd be cool.
Yeah, right? Man, it'd be awesome.
We walked that side down from the Cayenne Trail all the way going down to Seattle. And these woods on this side over here, people don't know that the inside on the other side of the mountain is a warring mountain. They're just big. They're just not tall.
Short and fat.
Yeah. How do you?
I've seen one on this side, when we were looking for that lost snowskin. Nice wood.
And on the other side is more.
It's almost 4 foot diameter, over 100 feet tall. So pretty good too.
Yeah. One of those trees could make how many frames? Lots of frames. We don't need that much for a frame.
So,
But we gotta plan it out, because we can't just be throwing our loose everywhere.
I believe you.
Underground cold storage. We used to use that. That means no electricity in the summertime for all these freezers. No electricity bill in the summer for all these freezers. Man. And they said those underground cold storages were better too because they didn't dehydrate the meat like freezers do. And you could keep veggies in there and they would stay cool and they would stay good. Think about it, man. Start collecting kohak, kukrimak, akpik, shurak, tutu, kalupak, igimaklu, okro. Have your own underground storage cellar, don't have to worry about electricity bill for it. Solar power. You know what kind of bomber solar power system you could put in with your summer firefighting? Or just put a third of your firefighting money away. And after 3 years, get a bomber solar power system. My dad and his wife are completely off grid. They live 100 miles outside Anchorage and they got solar power. They run everything off solar power. LEDs, indoor lighting, they take way less electricity. They're in their houses off of batteries that are charged by their solar panel. They're all big boat batteries. They're like this tall. I always have to move them around whenever my dad told me. And then some of them spit acid when they get dry, so you gotta learn what kind to get. But it's not just about moving to Selawik, moving Selawik up to the hills. It's about the last 45 years ANCSA has been around. And starting to change all this focus on death. We need to start focusing on life. We need to start supporting our young adults that need supporting. We need to start supporting our elders that need supporting. Start doing more stuff like that. We know there's a lot of problems, not just here in Selawik, all over rural Alaska. We know there's problems with social justice. When I was in school, I learned about Imanga. They have a tribal court for their youth. When their young kids get in trouble, they have to go to a elders court. And the rates for youth that have to go through that elders court, less of them get into trouble again than the youth that don't go through that and go through the Nalagami court system. So there's ways to handle justice that work better than the Nalagami way, the troopers, OCS. I remember when there was no law in town, man. I had to go citizens arrest somebody one time. So we gotta start thinking about not just moving Selawik, but changing our focus from all the negative stuff that's been going on. Start focusing on life. Start focusing on the positive stuff. Start changing the way we think about money. Instead of waiting for the first of the month, try to start making things that the Nalagamis will buy. Or anybody. On the World Wide Web, somebody from China could buy it, man. But with our ability to make stuff and to solve mechanical problems, man, we can make some awesome stuff. Bring back the wooden barrel. They used to keep food in cold storage in wooden barrels. I bet there's people downstates that would pay big bucks for a wooden barrels made by Eskimos. Traditional wooden Eskimo barrel.
There was one of my dad's cousins, he really wanted his own one. So he hauled it out and keep it on and had a barrel.
That's one way to make a barrel. Yeah. But we have to start thinking about what we can produce. Because right now we're not producing anything. We're just consuming. Consuming. We're smart. We can work together. There's 72 people on the name board for 5 jobs. 72 people are going for 5 jobs in this town right now. Right now. That's a lot of labor pool. What if, one of my cousins was talking about, what if we had a mall? Like they have in Anchorage with Target, I don't know, Fred Meyer's. What if we had a mall in Selawik with all those kinds of things? People would travel from all over, people would travel from all over the region to Selawik to go to the mall and have it staffed 24/7. That's what one of my cousins was thinking. But what I'm saying is we need to start thinking and getting creative. Start working together. Make knives. Make handmade knives. Start forging knives. Make a forge. Make handmade Eskimo knives, man. Forge knives. Make art. Sell it on eBay. Sell it on Etsy. We got a post office. We got an airport. We can ship stuff. Put tracking number, USPS tracking number.
Right now, we don't have a post office.
Oh, well, yeah, sometimes we don't have a post office. I went to Canada for the ICC in Kudruk in 2002 and I got interviewed by a newspaper there. They were asking what I thought the solution to all the team problems was. And I said, we gotta go back to the old traditional activities. Make skin clothes, make pipe, make bows and arrows. If people were learning how to do that, we used to have men's houses in this area, where the men could go and hang out and learn from men that already knew how. If we started doing that in community, even though maybe nobody knows how to make old style bow or old style pipe, we could figure it out after 5 years. We have to. The whole world is going to have to. We just have an advantage of being in Alaska around all this stuff. We have an advantage because we already know how to live with hardly anything. We got to start while we still can.
Yeah, I'm getting old, but I'm with you.
Right on. Man. Food. Our old style food was better, man. All this modern food is no good for us. Carbohydrates, milk. We're not made to eat carbohydrates and milk all the time. Our bodies aren't made for that. There's lots of good nutritional food around here. We've been here for 10, 14,000 years. But it starts to get weird when we think of ourselves as a nation, when we think of ourselves as a people. Because then we start after thinking about diplomatically between us and the state. And diplomacy, it's narrow. Diplomacy is a very narrow point of convergence between two countries on an extremely limited amount of interests. In other words, our point of convergence and the state of Alaska's point of convergence is going to be very narrow. The state of Alaska, the government doesn't have that much incentive, isn't going to have that much overlap with us. But we can do this if we start conserving our gas. Hope is not a strategy. We can't hope our way out of this and think, oh, well, something will happen, we'll figure it out. That's not a way to solve problems. When you're stuck out in the country, man, you can't be like, well, I hope I get picked up. No, man, you gotta build a fire or something. And we can't have fixed solutions. We can't have solutions that we're gonna say, okay, this is what's gonna work all the time. Those kind of solutions, they expire. Solutions have to be what works right now in the long-term goal. They're gonna have to change and adapt, just like we've changed and adapted for years. This one's really wordy. But I think maybe that middle quote probably sums it up. Crises are a sign that evolution is trying to break through a business as usual process that isn't working. Right now, the way we're living, hustling for stove oil, hustling for food, hustling for grub, it's business as usual because we're used to it by now, but it's not working. And we're in crisis. Even though it may not seem like we're in crisis right now, man, we're in a crisis. Because we're dependent on the state. If food stamps got cut off tomorrow, if all of our gas disappeared, I mean, we'd figure it out, but man, it'd be rough. We need to lower our dependency on store-bought food, because it's not as nutritional as local food. Local food is better no matter where you go on the planet. It's fresher, it's better. And so I was telling people that the point of this meeting is 100 years from now. People are going to look back and they're going to hear about our time. They're going to hear the history of our time. What kind of stories are they going to tell about us? What kind of lives are those people going to be living? Some of the people I told today about the men's meeting, they said, nah, I don't need to go, because we're all going to be in heaven by then. We're all going to be saved. And that's cool. Man, right on. If Jesus is coming and eventually and soon and end times are here, you know, who am I to say anything else? But we also can't just sit around and wait for stuff like that. We have to start working. We have to start thinking about our kids as kids as kids. 100 years from now. We don't know when end times are coming. If we just sit around and wait for all these problems to be solved themselves, I don't know. Our Indo-Catholic crusade has gotten us this far. 10, 12,000 years, 14,000 years. But just in the short time that I've been around, and I'm not even an elder, I'm not even anywhere near an elder, but just in the short time I've been around, man, I remember when I was a kid, we went to church, and if an elder looked at you, boy, that was like a scolding. Nowadays, discipline is different. And if we're going to try to get to this place of better social justice, economics, moving the spud, we're going to have to rely more on our New Catholic crusade. Respect, honoring our parents, honoring our children, respecting the land, respecting the animals. I hear kids always shoot birds nowadays. Man. A friend of mine, Anna Hoover, told me one time that love is the triumph of the imagination over the intellect. And I thought that was beautiful. When your imagination can win over your mind, and when you can think of something, you can imagine something real big, but you know in your mind, no, that's not gonna work or something, but what you're dreaming is awesome. Maybe that's love poking through and be like, yeah man, you can be alive. Okay, that's my last slide. I'm all done. Picture of Dada and Judy Chat. Thanks, Grant. Oh, Lewis. But I wanted to make this like a conversation starter, you know? I didn't want to just preach and talk. What you think, bud?
Good job.
Wouldn't it be awesome to make kayak? Make your own boat? Get a hunting party organized, and instead of just hunting whenever you want, work with people, and that way it would be better for everybody. Yeah. You need to do something, man. Herb, you wake up.
Out for a while.
I know.
I got up too early this morning. Cracked him up.
Oh yeah, that's all right. Yeah, right. We'll get there. It'll take 100 years. But we won't get there unless we start getting there.
The journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. Thanks for taking that first step, Arlo.
Yeah. Thanks for coming. Stay cool. Dot na galaw ha.
Alright, Arlo.